we'll teach you how to figure out if there's a market need. So for those who haven't heard the term before, customer discovery, well, what is it? It's the process by which you get out of the building and talk to real people who you hypothesize are your customers. And there's some key words in there that we're going to develop a little bit further: getting out of the building, hypothesize, and real people, and it's important. You're seeking to understand through customer discovery your customers' problems and pain points. People buy products, goods, and services, key point here at the bottom, because they solve a problem for them. If you can't understand who your customers are and what problems and pain points they have, you can't sell them a product or a solution. And you do that through customer discovery. Through this process, you're also seeking to validate and invalidate all the assumptions and hypotheses that you have about your idea and businesses. And we're going to talk a little further in the workshop what it means to have a hypothesis, but it's rooted in the scientific method of making observations, creating a hypothesis around those observations, and testing to see if that's true or not, and analyzing the data on those experiments. So again, that's the process of customer discovery. You can't sell from behind your computer. You can't sell, in your house or in your office building. You have to get out and talk to people to understand what are they going through, what problems and pain points they have. Customer discovery is all about people. If there's one thing you're going to get away from this workshop today, it's that customers are people and they are everything to your startup idea. So what's the value, right? I talked about what customer discovery is. What's the value of doing it? Well, startups often have limited capital. Probably less than 5,000 when you first have an idea. You want to understand if there's a market need, if there's a problem that you're solving before you try to invest and seek more money, right? You don't have a lot of resources to figure it out. Customer discovery is an efficient way to figure out if there's a market need for your problem. Most, if not all of you on the call are students. So for you, this is quite relevant. You have limited time. You're balancing other commitments as a student. You need to make sure you're doing what you can to be efficient with your customer discovery while also balancing your other commitments of being a student. For those who aren't students and maybe you're a little later in life and you have another career, but you have that idea that you want to start, maybe you got a family and a mortgage, you're balancing a lot of things. You can only spread yourself so thin, so you have limited energy. You need to make sure you're doing what you can to talk to the right people before you put all your effort and energy into a product or solution that's not going to work because there's no market need. So we're going to play a little game real quick called Did It Sell? And there's going to be 4 products that I'm going to show you, and I want you to let me know if you think it's sold or not. The first is Juicero. And it is a machine that squeezes juice from packets to create fresh pressed juice. And so I'm going to use a quick poll on Zoom and see. I'm back. Okay. Thank you for your patience. The only difference with today from my internet happens to be the neighbors getting their tree cut down. So I'm assuming that whatever they're doing is affecting the internet wires. So appreciate your patience. Okay. Did it sell? Juicero. Juice machine squeezes juice packets. Let's use the quick poll and figure out if this sold. So answer the first question if you think Juicero sold or not. And we'll go through. And then the next product, Google Plus. Let me know if you think it's sold or not. Just click yes or no. Next product we have is Teaphoria. It's a nice tea machine that brews fresh leaf tea, kind of like a Keurig machine. And then the last product is a service called Zertrol, which is a virtual secretarial administrative assistant business for startups. So just briefly in the poll, click yes or no whether you think they sold. I will end the poll in 10 seconds, just quick, and then we'll go back and talk about the products. I don't think anybody has voted. Okay. So unless the polling wasn't working, I didn't see anybody vote. But so Juicero.
I not be able to submit results.
Oh, really? Oh. We're just having all sorts of issues today. I apologize. Well, we'll just talk it through. Juicero did not sell. It actually was a huge flop. Hundreds of millions of dollars were spent developing this machine that squeezed these packets of juice that you could actually squeeze with your hands. It was a big flop. They did not do any customer discovery to figure out if people actually wanted a fancy machine that could squeeze juice. And part of the problem was also that it was a product that really didn't work, that could be kind of disrupted by your two hands. So it did not sell. And a classic case of over-engineering a product, pouring millions of dollars of capital into something without actually figuring out if there's a problem or a market need. Google Plus, I hope this one was pretty obvious that it did not sell and was quietly shuttered by Google a couple of years ago. They assumed that they could create an alternative to Facebook, but did they actually do the customer discovery to figure out they were solving a problem? I would argue they didn't, because the problem was being solved by Facebook. The ability to connect with others across the country, across the world, in a quick and easy format was being solved by Facebook. Google Plus created a platform that didn't really differentiate itself in any meaningful way, and so didn't really do too long, and hung around a lot longer than I actually expected it to. T-Foria, did it sell? It did not. Again, you could brew a bag of tea or loose leaf tea quite easily with a stainless steel tea mesh ball. In a cup, 4 minutes later, you have wonderful tea. Again, they created a product that there was no market need for. And an interesting fact about this T-Foria product, it was recently used as a case study in the Simon Business School for a class where they were actually trying to analyze to see if there was any market potential for any of the intellectual property created for it, but there wasn't. And so, I believe $12 to $15 million was wasted again on development of this product. So it did not sell. And then our final one, Zirtual. Again, this is the virtual assistant secretary service for startups. And it actually did sell. It actually has done really well, and it was a recent exit to a company in Ohio. But they found out that startups didn't have the capital or the time to hire someone to basically be their personal assistant and admin assistant. They did the discovery, they went into the market and found out there was a need for it, and it's actually been pretty successful. So just a quick couple examples of products that had and didn't have a market need associated with them. So when to do customer discovery? Always. It's always a good time to do customer discovery. If you have an idea, wouldn't it be cool if you are, have what's called an MVP, a minimally viable product, is this what my customers want? Or maybe you've been in business and you're your first quarter in, right? Let's give it a shot and see if this is working, see if it's still working for our customers. Or are you a year in, right? Is this really going? Are we actually selling? Is this responding well to our customers? There's never a wrong time to do customer discovery, but there's only a wrong way to do it. And that's really important to know. The most successful companies, even Google, albeit the Google Plus failure, do customer discovery. So customer discovery involves what we call hypothesis-based testing. And again, back to the first slide, it's about the assumptions that you have about your idea, about your customer, their pain points, right? It's all about these observations that you make and the assumptions based on those observations. You're trying to disprove those assumptions. You want to make sure that when you're in your discovery, you're trying to figure out everything that can make your product fail. Because if you know that soon before we put a lot of energy and effort into developing it, that means you're not going to spend a lot of time and money wastefully. So again, if you can't disprove, then you keep things going. But if you are disproving the assumptions, if you are finding out that people don't really have a problem that my technology solves, you either stop or you pivot. And so what is a hypothesis in the startup sense? Well, through the I-Core program, we tell our participants that you start with what's called the leap of faith, your initial belief, right? I believe my customer needs the generic solution that I have in order to solve the core problem, which leads to an important outcome. This is a really, really good template that you can use just to quickly frame your thoughts around what might be your hypothesis. But then we want to take that hypothesis a little more specific, right? You make it specific, you make it focused. You add some quantities and you eliminate any mention of your technology. Again, because this is all about your customers. So let's see an example of this template put into practice. So this is what a common hypothesis might look like. I believe a lab technician on a construction site needs a higher level of safety when dealing with hazardous materials in order to continue working with the contracting company. It's broad in the sense that you've identified your customer, you have broadly identified the solution, the value, high level of safety, but you don't mention your technology. And then you talk about why that's important in order for them to continue working with the company. So then when we bring that down, more focused and more specific, we can bring some quantity into it. So lab technicians on construction sites dealing with hazardous materials need safety levels to be at 98% effective in order to find the job attractive, leading them to stay 2 years longer. You might not know when you first come up with your hypothesis or your leap of faith what some of those specific items and data points might be, but you'll figure them out through your discovery. If you were this company and you had a solution that provided a higher level of safety, you might through your interviews find out that, compliance at a construction site really only needs to be 95% safe, or that it needs to be 100% safe. You might find out that people at this contracting firm only need to stay with the company for 3 years or 2 years or 1 year, right? Your discovery will lead you to these specifics, and then you use that to refine your hypothesis further, so that when eventually you've done hundreds of interviews, you know exactly what the customer should say, you know exactly what the feedback is going to be, and you're in business. The ultimate goal with customer discovery and hypothesis-based testing is to give yourself the confidence that you have what's called product market fit. Do you have a product, service, or solution for customers that solves a problem for them in a market big enough to support scalable business? If you don't have that, you're in deep trouble. So that's important. So a little bit more about the ins and outs of customer discovery. 25 hours will save you 250 hours. This is about the time it'll take to do about 30 interviews. And that's kind of what we want to see, before you start seeing patterns in the discovery process. Talking to 30 people, after that, things will start to emerge. Similarities will start to show themselves that you can, bank on. So talking to strangers, right? What should you do and what shouldn't you do? Well, you don't want to ask leading questions. And customer discoveries, these are interviews. You're talking to someone to get them to tell you about a day in their life. Tell me about the last time you worked on a construction site. Tell me about the last time you interacted with a piece of farm equipment. You want them to tell you stories about their day, because in these stories is where you're going to get these pain points and the behavior changes. You can't do that through surveys. Surveys are let you ask, one question, you get a yes or no response or multiple choice. You can't ask follow-up questions. You also don't want to cherry pick any data that you receive from your customers. Everything a customer tells you should be analyzed fairly. You shouldn't hear one thing and discard it because something doesn't conform with what you want to believe. Something called confirmation bias, right? Only listening and hearing something that confirms with your preconceived notions or your preconceived beliefs. You need to be open and aware of everything you're hearing from your customers. And again, it's about identifying their pain points, but also identifying behavioral changes. If in talking with a customer, you hear them say, this is a big problem and I created my own solution to figure it out, to solve it, that's when you know it's a real issue, because they did something to try to fix the problem they were having. That's something really key to look out for when you're doing customer discovery interviews. Did they do something to address the problem? If they didn't, it might not be that big a deal. It might still be a problem, but it might not be that big a deal to your customers if they're able to live with the problem.
I have a quick question.
Of course.
What did you mean by become aware of cognitive biases?
So there are, I forget the number, 15, 20 recognized cognitive biases. These are things that as the human brain kind of picks up on as a way to make decisions easier for us so we don't have to think about it. So confirmation bias is the biggest bias that comes into play with customer discovery process and startups. It means that you are only listening and only really hearing and accepting things that confirm with your preconceived beliefs and notions. So if we want to go back to the Juicero example, those people might, the founders of that company might have believed that their customers were so high tech and natives that they were going to use a high tech machine. And so they belong, kind of got fed into the belief that customers, of course, are going to use a machine. They're high tech. They're very, tech native. They're going to, marvel at this beautiful juicing machine, and they're going to want to use it no matter what. So we're going to build it anyway. Whereas they could have just as easily, gone down the store and bought some fresh juice, right? It's preconceived biases that you have. If I can share another example from an experience of a professor at the Hagem and Simon School, Mike Riedlinger, he was with a startup team about 8 years ago now, going through this customer discovery process as part of a National Science Foundation program. He was working with a scientist, Professor Jeannick Roland, and she created a new method to dose light. And they thought that this new method could treat skin cancer. So they went to San Francisco, got this training, went and met with a dermatologist. And they were talking to the dermatologist and saying, tell us about the ways you treat skin cancer. And so the dermatologist, said to them, here, this is our laser, we use to treat skin cancer. We can get maybe 3 patients in an hour, and the insurance will reimburse us for X dollars. But we also use this chemical system. And this chemical system, we can get 10 patients in an hour, and we can actually get, 3X the reimbursement from insurance. So after that interview, Professor Riedlinger, Professor Roland, and Christina Canavisi, the graduate student with them, were analyzing the interview. Professor Roland, who created this technology, this new laser that she thought could treat skin cancer, said, oh my goodness, the doctor already uses a laser. They're going to want our product. This will be successful. Whereas Professor Riedlinger and Christina Canavisi said, no, Professor Roland, if you listened, they actually use the laser because the chemical treatment, because they can get more patients through and 3 times as much reimbursement from the insurance. Professor Roland, in her confirmation bias, could only see the fact that they were using the optical laser, and not the fact that the chemical treatment was actually the one they were using. So it really wasn't a problem for them. So I hope that kind of illustrates a little bit about what confirmation bias is and how it can be, kind of impactful in your discovery if you're not careful about it. So I want to spend a moment just highlighting different types of customers that come into play. And these are important because customers are people, but there are different types of customers. So when you're doing a discovery, you have to be careful with who you're talking to. So the end user is one customer. They're the ones who use your product. It's important to know who is using your product because oftentimes they are the ones who buy your solution. There are influencers. These are customer types who have input on the decisions, but maybe not the final say of purchasing a product. A recommender, similar to an influencer, they might state a preference for a product, might be an outside expert to the customer, but they might not be the actual customer themselves. Decision maker, this is someone with the ultimate purchase authority. Economic buyer, who actually writes the check and makes financial arrangements. And a saboteur. Important to know who the saboteur is. They could be someone who actively seeks to undermine the adoption of your new product. And I bring these different types of customers up because as you go out and talking to people, you might realize you're talking to an influencer, a recommender for the end user who you didn't even think existed. So they could lead you to find out who the end user is. You might discover that the end user is also the decision maker. Or the end user is different than the decision maker. For example, cereal, more often than not, parents and guardians are the decision maker, but the end user is the child. They might also be the influencer, the recommender, especially if they're maybe noisy in the store and complaining because they want that cereal. They could also be the economic buyer. Saboteurs could be people who are being disrupted by the introduction of a new product. So it's in their interest to try to dissuade the decision makers and try to influence the recommenders and the end users to not use your product. You will encounter all types of these customers through customer discovery. And having this little framework of who they are, you can start writing down in your analysis, this job title is definitely an economic buyer, or I have to look out for this particular job title in these companies because these are my saboteurs. So it's important to know who these customers are. So people lie. That should be, kind of obvious. And why we put this in here is because people often start customer discovery with who they know, friends, family, close associates, colleagues. And that's okay if you want to practice the process of customer discovery, but they're not really going to give you good information, right? Because they know you, they want you to be successful. So they're going to sugarcoat it. Oh, that sounds great. Oh, your product seems like it's going to be awesome. You'll do, well. Of course, people will buy this, right? So when you do discovery, make sure you're not talking to people that you know, especially those who know what your idea is, that you just weren't going to get good information. So we're going to take a little practice now, and I'm going to request 2 volunteers, but we're going to kind of try out some customer discovery. So some frameworks for asking good questions, again, because customer discovery interviews, rely on the types of questions you ask. Tell me about the last time you insert. This is probably the gold standard for when it comes to starting a customer discovery interview. It lets you elicit a story from your customer. Walk me through the first time you used, this product. What was it like the last time you encountered a problem in this particular service? What did you do the last time you encountered? Why did you choose to do that way? And then ask why again, and ask why again, and why again. Asking why is probably the second most powerful question you can do in a customer discovery interview, because you're asking again for a story and you're following up to get more information. The more talking your interviewee is doing during an interview, the better. You never want to be the one dominating the conversation. You want them to be, the information to be flowing. So I need 2 volunteers for this. And I'm going to just pause share real quick and expand this. If you would like to volunteer, please do a thumbs up, and otherwise I'm going to pick on people. Okay, Carissa and John Woo. Excellent. Okay, so Carissa, I'm going to put you in a breakout room by yourself. We'll bring you back, don't worry. But this is just part of the example, okay? So let me just create a breakout room. Okay, so Carissa is in the breakout room. Let me reshare my presentation. Okay, so Jean, what you're going to do is you're going to interview Carissa because you have a new technology that repels water off of materials, right? So you have this new technology, it's, water impermeable, it'll roll right off. And you have a hypothesis that you've created from this technology that people don't like using umbrellas because they get wet and they're hard to store and transport after use. So you're going to find out from Carissa about the last time she used an umbrella. So you're going to start your interview with her and say, thank you for the last time, thank you for taking time to meet. As I said, I'm working on a research project about how people stay dry in rainy weather. Tell me about the last time you used an umbrella. And then we're gonna watch you have a little back and forth with her to see, what kind of experience you have, what information you elicit. But you don't want to ask her if she would like to use water repelling technology. You just want to find out about how she stays dry in rainy weather and see if, she doesn't like using umbrellas. So that's your hypothesis. These are the questions you're going to ask. I'm going to bring her back. I'm going to pause and stop sharing so she doesn't see this. So I'd recommend you take a picture of the screen if you need this for the interview. All right, you're all set? Okay. As soon as she's back in, we'll get.
So do I have to, so since she doesn't know anything about it, do I tell her briefly about what we're trying to do with the water technology, or should I just straight up just ask what was the last time you used umbrella and everything? Okay.
Start there. It looks like she's back. So, Krista, thank you for stepping away into the breakout room. Jean Wu is going to interview you to practice some customer discovery, and we're going to watch just for a couple minutes. I'll pause it, and then once this happens, we're going to flip it, and then you'll be the one interviewing. So, take it away.
Okay. Hello, Carissa. So, what is it? I wanted to ask you a question regarding how you manage yourself getting not wet and everything. So, when was your last time using your umbrella? When was your last time that you used umbrella, and then how was it? When was it? Where was it?
I
Do you
can't
remember any
remember
experience?
the last time I used an umbrella. Sorry.
Yes.
If I had to guess where was it, it would be at home when I was in Brooklyn during the pandemic, but I can't remember the last time I used an umbrella. I'm always using a hoodie.
Okay. I'm sorry. Wait, hold up. Sorry, I forgot what the hypothesis was. Sorry, guys. Okay. If you don't like using umbrella, how did you manage yourself not getting wet without using umbrella? Do you have any stories with it?
Okay, so there was this one time I had just got my hair done, and I wish I had an umbrella, but like I said before, I had a hoodie, so my hair didn't get wet, even though I just got it done because the hoodie was it was good enough as the umbrella to protect my head. So,
Yeah. Um, then is there any reason that you prefer hoodies rather than umbrella?
yeah, it's getting colder, and I'll never forget a hoodie, but I'll forget an umbrella. And I would have to check the weather to see if I need to bring an umbrella versus it's fall now. I'm most likely gonna always have a sweater on. So it's the idea of I won't forget it and I won't have to carry it around.
Okay. Um,
Okay, we'll pause it there. Thank you for indulging there. So, uh, Jungwoo, tell me, how was that experience? What information did you get from Carissa about, asking her about if she used an umbrella?
well, she told me that she doesn't prefer using umbrellas, and then she gave me a reason why she prefers hoodie rather than using an umbrella. And yeah, that was about it.
Yeah. So what's important there is that, you didn't mention your technology, right? You didn't say, do you want a water repelling piece of technology? You just asked her, tell me about the last time you used an umbrella. And she said, well, no, maybe, back in Brooklyn during the pandemic. And oh, by the way, I use a hoodie because it's convenient. I'm always going to have it, right? Really important insights there to help you understand a day in the life of your customer with regards to your specific hypothesis. If you had just asked her, do you want a piece of water repelling technology? She might say, well, what is that? Or sure, or tell me more. But it wouldn't have let you understand that she doesn't use a existing piece of water repelling technology like an umbrella, but a different one, such as a hoodie. So again, it just gets you understanding more about that. So we're gonna flip this around. So Jiangwu, I'm gonna put you in the breakout room, and then Krista, you'll be the one interviewing this time. Okay. So.
I'm using the same technology that he was using.
No, I'm gonna show a screen of a different one.
Okay, okay.
Yep. Just as soon as he joins the breakout room. But he looks frozen, so but it doesn't tell me he hasn't joined the room. Okay, there we go. All right, so let me share my screen real quick. So Carissa, you have a piece of technology that projects a keyboard from a mobile phone. And from this technology, you come up with a hypothesis that you think people struggle to write long messages on their touchscreen phones. So that's kind of the impetus of your technology. So that's what you're going to be working with here. So you're going to start your conversation with Jungwoo by saying, thank you for taking the time to meet with me. As I said before, I'm working on a research project about cell phone use. Tell me about the last time you wrote a long message on your cell phone. And then continue asking questions thereafter, right? Ask follow-up questions, if he's, ask why, if he says, I did or I don't, or, what was the experience like, right? Ask these open-ended questions to get him to tell his story. But don't ask him if he wants to use a projected keyboard, right? You're just trying to find out more about, what he does writing long messages on a phone. Sound good? Did you want to take a picture of the screen or you got it all written down? You're good? Okay. So let me bring him back. All right, he should be back here in just a couple seconds. So back. Jungwoo, we have you. Can you hear me? There he is. Fantastic. All right, so Carissa, please take it away.
Okay. Hi. Tell me about the last time that you had to write a long message on your phone. And was it annoying?
Yes. The last time I texted long was probably a few weeks ago when I told my ex-girlfriend to break up.
How long was the message?
So it was quite annoying because I knew I had to give a phone call, but I was too lazy to do it. So I just decided to do it on the text message. So because of that, it was quite long.
Bad boy. Do you have large thumbs?
Large thumbs? No, I
Yeah,
do
would
not
you
have a
consider
large
your
thumb.
thumbs fat?
No, it's quite skinny.
They're quite skinny. So with your skinny thumbs, because I have skinny thumbs too, do you usually make a lot of typos typing? Because I have pretty skinny fingers, but I make a lot of typos.
I don't know. Oh, what is it? I think that happens when I change my phone because like the size changes. But if I like keep using the same phone for a couple of years, I barely make mistakes.
How often do you think you're going backspace and typing backspace and deleting messages because you made like minor typos that are just annoying that you have to keep going back and fixing?
Good question. I never thought of that. Probably, I don't know. Probably every 10 words. I think
Every
so.
time you type?
Yes. Well, I think
How
I'm
fast?
pretty expert. I still do, yes. Minor mistakes, yes.
Yeah. How fast would you like to type if it wasn't for your skinny fingers on a small phone?
How fast do I want?
Yeah, in
I
your
want it to
day-to-day
be,
life, how busy are you? So you just want to hurry up and get that message out real fast.
honestly, I wish it can just be as fast as how I'm speaking right now. Like,
Oh, really? Say no more. I have the perfect product for you.
All right. So now that we know a little bit more about John Woo in this message, because Carissa, what did you learn from the interview aside from that he prefers to do his breakups via text?
So I learned that he does make typos a lot, just like everybody else. I learned that he doesn't have the problem that most people have of usually having big thumbs, because I know that's why a lot of people make a lot of typos. That's why I asked that, because of the big thumb issue. So I know that his problem doesn't have to do with size. So I would say that I was able to figure out that it's just speed, typing speed. And maybe just having that extra space to not be able to make those little minor typos.
Okay. So, you know, the first time you ever do a customer discovery interview, it's always going to be, you never know what you're going to get from that. But what I'm glad the interview went the way it did, Krista, because you actually brought some biases into your questioning, which I think, and it's okay, right? As long as you
yeah, when I mentioned my thumb too, right?
Right, you talk about your thumbs, and you assume that people with big thumbs make typos, right? And that's a bias. I have big thumbs, and sure, I make typos, but you know, I also have Google autocorrect that helps me out. So I'm glad that the interview went this way, because it shows that how easy it is just to immediately creep in that you could bring these in right away, right? You might have created that technology to project a keyboard from a phone just because you want to make it easier on people's hands to type a long message, not because they're making typos, but you know, you will automatically went to the typos. So that's okay. When you come up with an idea and you create your hypothesis and you're doing these interviews, you know, try to remove as much of any preconceived notion as possible. And it's hard. These are things that are ingrained in us because that's just the way our brain works. So it takes a lot of practice. And so for everyone, the first time you do a customer discovery interview, frankly, the first 10 to 15 you do with any new customer segment might just be garbage, right? It's you just working the kinks out, making sure you're asking the right questions, making sure you're not, you know, bringing any biases into it. So great. I'm really glad both these interviews went the way they did. So thank you, Krista, and thank you, John Woo for participating. So just a couple more slides, and then we can wrap up and have a little bit of time for some Q&A here. Again, so good questions to ask. You both started with an open-ended question. The next recommendation I have is then follow up. Why? Why was it difficult to type on your phone? What was that experience like? Or, why did you wear a hoodie? Tell me more about the hoodie. What about it, did you choose? Kind of, tell me why, and why again. So does anybody know who these two are? I know the name is right there, but does anybody know the significance of the relevance of them? Maybe. So these are the guys who thought they created Facebook, but actually didn't, depending on who you know. But Max and I created what we call the Winklevoss fallacy. Is that, no one gives a shit about your idea. If you're giving out your secret sauce, you're doing customer discovery wrong. The Winklevoss twins were so obsessed with the algorithm. They were so obsessed with the idea and technology that they thought was going to be Facebook, that they didn't do the discovery to figure out if it actually was something people wanted. That was what, say all you want about Mark Zuckerberg, but he, realized that people wanted this ability to connect. They didn't have a problem to connect at the time with other students in Harvard outside of, their Facebooks for their individual houses. And then even further, they didn't have a way to connect with other Ivy League schools. And then, however many years later, here we are with Facebook with what it is. Whereas the Winklevoss twins were so obsessed with their technology that they couldn't see beyond themselves. So customer discovery, again, is all about the customer, the people, and the process. They only care about your technology if it helps them solve a problem. Other than that, it doesn't matter when you're doing this. It matters for you because you need to be able to prove if it works, but customer discovery is all about the people. So next steps, what you do discovery, again, we talked about, do you have product market fit? Do you have a product or solution that solves a customer's problem in a market big enough to survive, to have a scalable business. If you do, create a minimum viable product. This is something that tests, one of your essential business hypotheses. You create it. It could easily be a sketch on a napkin. It could be a simple mock-up on a wireframe software, kind of like Balsamic is out there. Does it something that you can put it in front of a customer and say, do you think something like this might help solve your problem? And if it says yes, wonderful. Do this again with more customers and more customers. And eventually you're going to validate your minimally viable product to where you can then actually build a full prototype and be able to sell it further. And then more testing. This process is iterative. It's not a straight line. You will never go from idea to customer discovery, validation, product market fit, minimally viable product without a couple backtracks, without a couple circles in between. You're going to have an idea. You'll talk to 30, 40 customers. Oh, this isn't really the right problem we're solving. Let's go back and, go to a new customer segment. Or, these aren't the right customers, but, these customers have a problem we can solve. So you're going to change your value proposition. And eventually you're going to go forward. So just remember, it's never a straight line, but it's a series of circles and going back and forth and moving forward as you go up and along. So now what? Well, get out of the building. If you have an idea, try this out, work out the kinks on your friends, get some of that awkwardness out. But come up with an idea, test your hypotheses, see if there's a problem that you potentially could be solving. Talking to Humans is a really quick read. It's about 80 pages. It was created by Frank Rimolofsky from NYU. And as funny as the title sounds, it's really a kind of a handbook on how you do customer discovery more in depth than what we covered today in the presentation. It's free. Just Google Talking to Humans. It'll ask you for an educational email address, so your Rochester one's perfect, and you get a free PDF. And then, if you're going to join a corporation or a startup or a nonprofit after you graduate, even if you don't want to start your own idea or business right away, you can use these skills there too. They're not just for founders. The ability to talk to customers and do it in a non-biased way to elicit feedback is an essential skill that can really bring you success in any job you find yourself in. So it doesn't have to just be for founders. And if I can impart again one last time, understanding your customers' needs and if you have customers is an essential step in the entrepreneurial journey. Without that, you really don't have anything more than just a good idea. So thank you for your time. We have about 7 minutes for questions. Happy to take any if anybody has any.
I have a question. So is there like a appropriate number of questions that might be effective?
So honestly, no. Minimum of one. Tell me about the last time, you encountered this issue, or tell me about the last time you did something, right? If you ask that one question, you could have an entire interview where you don't say anything and the person is going on and on and on. So there's no real minimum number aside from that one. Another good question to ask at the end of a customer discovery interview is, who else do you think I could talk to about this idea or this project or this research, right? Or what didn't I ask you that you thought I was going to ask you? Some people love to talk, and they, most people are smart and can figure out pretty quickly on what you might be getting at. So they have something that they want to say, but they also want to be respectful. So kind of those three. Tell me about the last time. Who else can I talk to about this? And, was there something that I didn't ask that you thought I might ask? Kind of three core questions. I'll even add fourth one, why, right? The follow-up of why is important to ask.
Matthew, I have a question. You gave 4 examples, Juicero and T4ia and the others. I'm just curious, they ended up wasting so much money. How they must have been absolutely convinced they were right. So how did they get it so wrong?
Maximize hypothesis and just from some of the interviews we read, they just didn't understand the market. They didn't understand the need that customers actually had, right? No one had a need for a juice machine that applied over 1,000 pounds of force on a juice packet. And there's a video, and I can send the video link around, that you can squeeze with your hands, right? So they fundamentally misunderstood the problems that the customer had. They didn't have a need for a machine that could squeeze juice. They might have just had a need for fresh juice that they could have just sold the packets to, in the market.
Mm-hmm. But it just seems like they were delusional, really. And not just them, but there must have been a whole bunch of people. Like the message was never getting through that this was something nobody wanted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so it's a really good point, because you want to make sure when you have an idea, you bring others into it, so that when you're doing these interviews, and kind of like the example I gave of Professor Riedlinger and Professor Rowland, there are people who can check your biases, who can say, you know what, that's not what we're hearing, that doesn't make sense. You're just hearing what you want to hear. There is almost this sense of infallibility when it comes to really good technologists and really good engineers, that if they build it, they will come. Well, not necessarily. I don't know if any of the students here were here 2 years ago, but the Simon Business School had a pizza vending machine. It was created by some folks who used to work at Kodak, and they poured over $10 million into the development of this vending machine that made fresh pizza. But no one had a need for fresh pizza from a vending machine, right? They could just go to the vending machine and get a Snickers bar and not wait 7 minutes for a fresh pizza. So just because you can build something doesn't mean people are going to want it. Steve Blank has this great line, make what you can sell, not what you can build. Any other questions from anyone? Okay. Well, if not, I want to thank you all for being here, and I want to make sure I give credit again to Max Sims, who helped put this presentation together a couple years ago, the NSF I-Corps program, which I use a lot of materials from to put this together. And thank you everyone for participating today, especially Carissa and Zhang Wu for being willing participants to undergo the process of customer discovery. So
yeah. Thank you so much, Matt.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Those of you in my class will meet back in the classroom. Thanks again, Matt.
Thank you.